Hi, I'm Cameron.
And I'm Hayden.
And this is...
Until the End of Crime. Cameron, I need you to do some self-reflection.
God, I hate when you do this to me.
I want you to think back to the last time you were at a bar or a club with friends.
I'm going to have to travel way back in the past for this.
That's okay. Travel. Put us in the time machine. What year are we going to?
We're probably going pre-pandemic.
Okay.
The last time I was in a club. The time that I can remember the most recent. It's not really the most recent, but like when I lived in Pflugerville, my roommate and I would go to Rock Rose at the Domain once a month.
Okay.
So I'm specifically thinking of when we went for what I believe was my 29th birthday.
You haven't been in your 20s in a while.
Fuck off.
Sorry. Okay, your 29th birthday.
I think it was my 29th birthday, but I can remember that for the most part.
You know, I should be more specific. Have you ever been out clubbing or to the bar and lost your friend? You didn't know where they ended up. Someone absconded in some way. Maybe you didn't even see them for the rest of the night and you didn't catch up with them until the next day.
Nar.
Never?
No. You come together.
People ever went missing?
You come together, you leave together.
You know what? I think that women play by safer rules, smarter rules most of the time. I think for men, one of my buddies went missing. Oh, God. I'm trying so hard to put myself in a straight mind. He's getting some strange. He found someone to hook up with. He's out pounding kitties. How do straight men talk to each other about, you know what? I'm actually not interested.
Actually, I don't think that they get that detailed. That's one of the biggest differences. Yes, women are more maybe cautious when they put themselves in these situations, but they're like, he probably met some girl, like he probably is hooking up with some chick. He's probably whatever, and then they're not gonna. But not all, right? Not
Certainly
all men.
Not. Not everything is for everyone, and that's a real blessing. I don't know what You know what? I asked my coworker a couple of weeks ago. I said, hey, what do straight men talk about when it's just a bunch of straight men? And he was like, I don't know. I was like, you're a straight man. And he was like, yeah, but I don't understand your question. And I was like, well, I don't know. Is it just like, football, video games?
I think that there's an activity.
About?
I think that there's there's an activity that they're like focused on. Usually. So it could be getting together to watch the game, but they're not sitting around talking about football or any other sport. Or they're on video games, like with the headsets and the talking to each other through that medium. Or they're like playing golf, which doesn't have a lot of... Like, I think that there is an activity that they're doing, and then the conversation can kind of focus on that. I don't know. Neither one of us really knows because neither one of us has ever really infiltrated.
I've never, I don't know. He explained it to me. And I remember at the time I was like, no, I know that men are more disgusting than that. He was like, no, like I
think they're simpler than you're probably giving them credit for.
Well, I don't like that word. I feel like
I was very specific when I selected it.
Simple-minded is so ugly.
I didn't say simple-minded. I said they are simpler.
I know. But I go to simple-minded.
Well, that's on you.
Anyways, none of that is the point. That's all besides the point. So, today's case centers around the disappearance of a straight man.
Well, you did already tell me. I
want to introduce it, but... let me see.
How about this? How about I cut in and say, one, listeners, in case you can't tell, in case you can't hear it, I am a bit under the weather or a bit poorly. So here,
Poorly.
yeah, here they say poorly. I'm poorly. But somebody said
Do the British want to be liked? Do they care?
Listen to what I'm saying. The last 2 weeks of school before we broke for the summer, somebody messaged one of my coworkers and said that their child was under the weather. And they thought that was very novel to be told that they were under the weather. And I was like, that's very, I guess, American. I never would have thought, but to say someone is
American,
but to say someone is under the weather was like,
right?
They were like, it was some little cute trinket that they just found, and I was like, gosh, that's such a common. You see, here's my theory. The longer I'm here, the more my theory about. I think that the British, because the accent is perceived as fancy or posh, which is kind of how it evolved to being what it is. But, we've gone over this when we've talked about car park versus parking lot. I think that parking lot sounds a little bit more frou-frou than car park. And then I maintain that lift and elevate. If you were given somebody who was objective and didn't know anything about the two languages, they would ascribe elevator to the British and lift to the Americans. And yet, that's not the case. So I think that maybe it's just the accent, but I just don't know what I'm trying to say, but I think that maybe in America, maybe they're trying harder in America to sound frou-frou-y. Right.
On those fronts, yes. But when we talk about under the weather, you're not allowed to be sick in the United States. You have to go to work. You have to make your money. You have to You have to earn your coin. You don't get to be poorly.
And you don't have time. You don't even have time to say phrases like earn your coin. You have to shorten it to things like oin.
Yeah. That's how busy we are. So, Brits have the luxury of doing poorly. We have to just be under the weather.
You're not doing poorly. You are poorly.
Sure.
It's being poorly.
Yeah. A luxury that is unaffordable in the United States.
No, I'm far more familiar with being poor than poorly.
Where were we before that?
Well, I was saying that I am under the weather, and then also before we started recording, you mentioned the case that you're going to be telling me today, and I think anybody who's really a true crime listener and not just one of our sad sack family and friends who listen out of pity.
You know what?
They probably know where this is going already, don't you think?
Sure.
If they're familiar with our format, our formula, and how we have a case-adjacent question.
Just to acknowledge the level of egotism that I sometimes experience, because one of my coworkers is a Patreon, and we were in supervision on Friday, and someone was discussing something, and he said, "That sounds like a true crime story that I've heard." I was like, oh, he must have heard it from us.
No way.
He didn't. Hello, Hero. I thought you were talking about us until you sent me the text that said where it came from. And I was like, how interesting. I don't remember covering that case.
So as I was saying, I think that people probably do know where this is going if they're familiar with our formula. Don't you think?
Probably. If I'm not going to cover a murder, I'm going to cover a disappearance.
I know.
The time is 1:55 a.m. The date is April 1st, 2006. April Fool's Day. Outside of a second-floor bar in Columbus, Ohio, the neon sign of the Ugly Tuna Saloona cuts through the darkness.
No. Ugly Tuna Saloona is objectively a bad business name.
Honestly, I kind of love it. I hate fish.
You like saying
Ugly
it.
Tuna Saloona.
Nope.
You don't like that at all?
I don't like it at all.
But it's kind of fun.
Is it a bar?
I think so, yeah.
I'm not going to that. The Tuna Saloona?
Okay, but it makes a promise of cheap fun. It says...
We're calling John Taffer, and we're going to ask him what he thinks about the title, name, Bar Rescue.
That fucking song. I don't know what show I watch where I have to hear that Bar Rescue. Oh, yes, I do. When I watch Real Housewives on Bravo or Peacock, it's how does it go? What is it to the tune of? I don't know, it makes me also think of The General. Go to the General and save some time. But what is the Bar Rescue song? It's Bar Rescue. I hate it.
I've seen probably every episode of Bar Rescue. I have no clue what you're talking about.
Okay.
It's like the guy, and the intro is like the guy, and it's like, it's just this guy, and he's like, bar rescue. That, I don't know a song, but I know that as the intro where the guy is like a cartoon.
There's a whole little ditty of a song for Bar Rescue on television. Okay. I think you would go to the Ugly Tuna Saloona. Their tagline is fresh fish, ugly owners. You don't appreciate that level of self-deprecation from your bar owners?
I think I'm more disturbed by the idea of fresh fish in Ohio. And Columbus is South Ohio, right? Like the north part of Ohio is nearish to some water, maybe. I'm terrible at geography, if you can't tell. If you can't...
there's freshwater fish. Tuna's not one of them, but...
Sure. I don't even know how you know that. I don't know that.
Tuna's caught in the ocean. That's why dolphins sometimes end up in it.
Is that why Ariel was friends with Flounder? No, that's not even a tuna.
Flounder's a flounder, I think.
Yeah, he is.
I think the tunas are saltwater fish.
Okay. It's not a very salty fish.
Are there freshwater tuna, or is all tuna from the ocean?
Tuna are exclusively saltwater fish, and the word Altoona is not related to them. It is a city name with different origins.
I know that, you stupid bitch. You just misunderstood me. Okay, so tuna is all saltwater.
What about flounder?
Blowfish.
Okay, that makes it worse because I do know, not good at geography, but I do know that Ohio is not near an ocean.
It is the Midwest.
Right.
Yeah. It is
isn't it like starting to border on some of the New England states?
It's really disrespectful to ask me questions like this. I came prepared to talk about true crime, not
this is a geography
nature of Ohio.
This is a geography podcast, though.
Well, let me go get Andrew so he can answer your question because he loves everything about geography.
Okay, be right back.
BRB. Is that my dog or your dog?
That would be Molly. Which is surprising because this is a Ginny move to drink like a camel. Well, they threw a bouillon cube in there earlier, so maybe it's finally flavored enough for her. I noticed a piece of kibble floating in there.
Ew. However, on April 1st, 2006, the Altoona Saloona. No, not Altoona.
That's a town.
The Ugly Tuna Saloona would become the backdrop for a vanishing act that defies all logic.
You know what? I think that it's so unlikely that I would go there, not because of the name of it, but I don't know that I'm an Ohio girly.
I don't know if I'm going to go in anywhere where investigation has led us to understand that someone can be seen going into your establishment and never seen leaving.
Spoilers.
Yeah, not to give it away at the beginning, but the Tuna Saloona sounds like, what is that stupid box in Harry Potter where you stick shit in it and you close it and it moves
The vanishing
else?
cabinets?
The vanishing cabinets.
It's like the two that communicate and you like go in one in Borgin and Burke's and then you can get into Hogwarts and then you can like get killed or Snape kills Dumbledore. Also spoilers.
Yeah. If you haven't done that one yet, that's on you.
It's been 18 years.
Yeah.
We're almost to the epilogue, I think.
Well,
it's already
now
happened.
At the part where we're restarting the series now as a television show on HBO Max.
We're at the part where Joanne has become Dolores Umbridge. That's the part that we're at. Not Voldemort, Umbridge.
Yeah. Very sad. A single unblinking security camera is mounted high above, its lens aimed at the top of an escalator, the bar's only public entrance and exit. The image it captures is grainy, kind of like a washed-out artifact of early 2000s tech. In the frame, a young man appears, 27-year-old Brian Shaffer, a second-year medical student at Ohio State University. Brian is tall and lean at 6'2" with an easygoing demeanor. And he kind of reminds me of Jerry O'Connell. I think that's his name. He was in Mariah Carey's Heartbreaker video. He was also in that movie Tomcats. He might have also been a Goonie.
Would you like to find any type of reference that I might know? Because music videos and movies is not it.
Well, I don't know how else to describe Jerry. I think he hosts a reality show now, maybe? Or maybe Entertainment Tonight. I don't know. In the video footage, Brian Shaffer is talking with two women. A casual, fleeting interaction. I think some have characterized it as potentially flirtatious, but I can't say that. After a moment, Brian says goodbye, and the women turn and walk away. Brian turns back. He takes a few steps toward the entrance of the bar, moving just beyond the camera's line of sight, and walks off screen and into nothing. This is the last recorded image.
Into the ugly tuna saloona.
This is the last recorded image of Brian Shaffer, a ghost in the machine, a man seen entering the bar's orbit, but never ever leaving. Not through the main entrance, not through any other exit. He steps into a blind spot and evaporates.
But you said that there was just one camera, right?
There is.
Pointed at the only public entrance, which is the escalator.
Mm-hmm.
So how do they know that he didn't go out a private entrance? Because the use of public, to me, implies that there is a private exit staff would use.
I think there's like a service entrance and exit. Mm-hmm. But I also believe it has a camera, but I can't remember for sure right now. But I'm pretty sure I cover it in a little bit.
Okay.
At the time that Brian Shaffer goes missing, when he, on April 1st, 2006, walks into the Ugly Tuna Saloona, Brian is a young man who has everything going for him. He's a medical student. He has a loving girlfriend that he is days away from proposing to, ring in hand. And he is just now, at this time, taking a break from school to go on spring break. So Brian Shaffer walks into the Ugly Tuna Saloona, which is a crowded college bar to celebrate his brief break from medical school. He was last seen on camera at 1:55 a.m., seemingly turning back towards the bar he had just stepped out of. But by the time the lights had come on at 2 a.m., he was gone. His friends, waiting outside, assumed he had just walked home. He had not.
So he left the bar and then...
He didn't really leave the bar. He just stepped outside onto that, porch area. So that elevator escalates them up to the bar. He steps out of the bar briefly and then goes back in.
Is it an elevator or an escalator?
Escalator. Did I say elevator?
Yeah, I was like, what?
No, sorry, it's an escalator.
Escalator takes them up to the bar. You said it's a 2-story or it's a second-story bar. What? It's a second-story bar?
Yes.
Okay. And so did he go on the escalator again?
No.
So he went on it once.
He comes up the escalator and that's all we ever see. Except for he steps outside of the doors of the establishment just briefly to say goodbye. And then he re-enters the Tuna Saloona.
Okay. Here's how you know that it's a terrible name. Because we're sitting here having to have a serious conversation about this man who disappeared in, what was the year?
2006.
19 years ago. And you're having to utter the name, the Ugly Tuna Saloona, far too many times for a serious conversation. I'm just saying. Okay, so he steps out, he says bye, he goes back in. Mm-hmm. There's footage of him re-entering the building?
Yes. So when you look at the footage, so it's kind of like this outdoor patio, but not necessarily meant for spending time on. There's not tables and stuff that I could see. And you see the 2 sets of escalators going up and down. He's there. He does a goodbye with these people or whoever it is, some kind of conversation. You see him step back left into the area where you walk back into the Ugly Tuna Saloona, but there's no other space he could have gone to. There's no other ingress, egress, anywhere he could have gone. Because if he were to have decided to, jump down from that patio, that would have been in view of the camera. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, but because I have familiarity with other...
Let me try to set it up. Imagine...
Well, can I say that because I have some familiarity with other coverings of this case or other coverage of this case, I am surprised to hear that he's being described as even exiting the establishment because from what I understood, he never left. There's no other place that the escalator leads to. It just leads upstairs to the bar and then it's a patio area and then...
Not even really a patio area. Okay. So, according to the security camera footage, at 1:57 a.m., Brian Shaffer is outside of the Ugly Tuna Saloona. He is out on the kind of patio area where the escalators, there's a set of up escalators, down escalators, and then kind of a set of two different stair pathways, all right next to each other, with two security guards both watching the escalator side, but the camera has a plain view of that entire ingress-egress, which is the only one that exists. Right off to the right side of where we can see, there is kind of this other area. And at the time, at 1:57 a.m., Brian and his friend were talking to two women, and supposedly, I hate to say this because I don't know this, but he was being very flirtatious with a woman named Brighton, kissed her neck, and she placed her information, her contact information, into his phone. She went inside to use the bathroom, came back out. Brian was not there. It looks like Brian entered into the Ugly Tuna Saloona after his friend Brighton had re-entered, and then we never see him on any kind of footage again. So he does walk outside of the Ugly Tuna Saloona, just briefly right before the end of when they close.
About to get engaged, right?
Yes, and not to Brighton.
Right.
We're going to talk a little bit more about what was going on in his personal life in a minute.
Yeah, and I'm asking a question without judgment. I'm just trying to remember the details that you gave earlier. I mean, I think in a situation outside of something like this, you would be like, oh, well, there would be motive for maybe a girlfriend to be upset if she were to find out that he was engaging or behaving this way when she wasn't around. But I know that there's just no evidence that he ever left the area.
Yeah. You're absolutely right.
You know what? There's no evidence of how he left the area because he's not there. It's not like he's just been hanging out there for the last 19 years. He's not there. He did leave at some point. We just don't know how he left.
There are things about this case that I find unsettling, which is that it seems as if the official authorities believe that he's still alive, and everyone else disagrees. Before we try to untangle anything else about that night, I want to talk about Brian Shaffer himself, the person. Brian Shaffer was born on February 11th, 1979, and grew up in Pickerington, Ohio, a pretty quiet suburb of Columbus. Also, I'm pretty sure that Pickerington is famous for other crimes, too. Does that sound right?
I have heard of it in a true crime area before, but I always only think of One Tree Hill whenever it comes up. And I can't remember if the name of the rival town that they play basketball against is Pickerington or Pinkerington, but I can just hear James Lafferty yelling, Pinkerington sucks, or whatever. Pickerington sucks.
Brian was the eldest of two sons, and from an early age, he was on a really clear trajectory. After graduating from Ohio State with a degree in microbiology, he was accepted into the university's demanding College of Medicine. To the outside world, Brian had a very clear path set before him. And at 27, he was handsome, smart, and reports indicate that he was universally liked. He had a passion for music, especially Pearl Jam, and he actually had a tattoo of the stick figure from their single Alive on his upper right arm. Brian was known for his relaxed and easygoing nature. He played guitar and moved through life with a quiet confidence. Brian had some pretty distinctive features outside of his Pearl Jam stick figure tattoo. He also had a distinctive fleck on the iris of his left eye, a unique detail.
Nobody is universally liked.
I'm just telling you that is
what I know.
Say.
I know. It's just like how every single woman who's ever been murdered lit up a room, but nobody is universally liked because there are people who are jealous or who feel like they have been wronged by you or who perceive everyone liking you as being something that they're maybe put off by even. No one is universally liked.
The anchor for Brian's life was his longtime girlfriend and fellow medical student, Alexis Wagoner. Their relationship, by all accounts, seemed to be the real thing. They had planned a spring break trip to Miami, a trip that was a Christmas gift from his mother. And Brian had a secret that he had shared with his family. He was going to propose to Alexis on this vacation. He was a man building a future. But a shadow had fallen across the future. 3 weeks before his disappearance, Brian's mother, Renee, died from myelodysplasia, a rare and aggressive cancer. He'd been incredibly close to her. A nurse herself, she was the inspiration for Brian's going into the medical field. In Investigation Discoveries The Missing, which is kind of very short episodes, I expected it to be longer, they kind of detailed that Brian had a really close relationship with his mother, and that, again, her work was the inspiration for him wanting to heal other people. His family was devastated, but were doing their best to hold it together for their father, Randy, and his younger brother, Derek. From what his friends, what people describe of Brian at this time, there seemed to be kind of a real pull between the grief of losing his mother, his relationship, his schooling, and then this kind of undercurrent desire that laid below the surface of wanting to be a musician. So one of the things that people have kind of gone back to in the past is that, I believe it was on Facebook, Brian posted, medical school is just kind of blah. I'm doing this until I can create my real career, which is as a musician. And essentially said something to the effect of, just wait till I get my own band together. On Friday, March 31st, the day before Brian vanished, he had just gone through a brutal week of exams. He had dinner with his father, who later recalled his son looking utterly drained, having pulled several all-nighters to study throughout the week. Randy wanted to tell him to stay home to rest, but he did not, an eventual regret on Randy's end. Something just popped into my brain, and it popped right back out.
Well, I had two thoughts when you said that. One is that you said that he regretted not telling him to stay, but if he chose to leave, it wouldn't have changed anything. Mm-hmm. He probably wouldn't have stayed. It would have unfolded. Anyway. Right.
But his mom had also just died 3 weeks before. Sorry to interrupt you, but I'm having this kind of moment where I'm thinking about one of the things that was reported, and I didn't include it, is that Brian Shaffer was an hour late to his own mother's funeral because he was just so distraught from her death. And I remember that time after my father died for like the first month, because I was on Christmas break my freshman year of college. And I remember things were both very hazy and very clear at the same time. Everything felt very real and not real at all at the same time. And I felt like there were moments where I could not grasp easy concepts, but I also could firmly command them. And so I think about, of course, this is a man who is a bit older, nearly 9 years older than I was when I lost my parent. But grief becomes the driver of your car. If your life is a car and you are the driver, when grief like that occurs, it tells you to sit in the passenger seat, and you do it. And you can still make commands. You can still tell grief where to go. But ultimately, grief gets to decide. And when I think about this situation where his father seems to feel some regret, I can't help but think grief was the driver. Grief, although Brian seemingly was compartmentalizing, right? Taking heaps of medical school exams this week, just 3 weeks after his mother's passing. Mm-hmm. Well, really, in likelihood, 2 to 3 weeks after his mother's passing. Feels like a really impressive feat in and of itself, but it makes me wonder what parts of his life were going to the wayside. Is that why he was supposedly flirting with this other woman? Is that why he felt the need to escape and just go to the Tuna Saloona?
Well, he was also on the precipice of making major life decisions, which is
an engagement.
Yes, but it's not recommended when you're in the throes of such fresh grief, right? People, it's almost like this reaction that is made when you're not necessarily in the right frame of mind to make it. And so even if he had planned to propose prior to his mother's passing, which it's not necessarily clear how prepared he was for his mother's passing. Like, did they have a week's notice, or did they have a couple months notice, or was it like hours or days? But I think that could be overwhelming to be thinking about something as big as proposing, or thinking about your mortality and also your future at the same time. It could be very, I guess, discordant ideas to be considering all at the same time, and it could be very overwhelming. I was just watching something. I don't know how familiar you are with Dean Withers. Any familiarity?
I know he's on the Scandal soundtrack.
What?
And we might be thinking of different Dean Withers. I might be totally wrong.
I could have the name wrong. But are you familiar with him?
That little twink?
Uh-huh.
The blonde one?
Yeah.
Okay, uh-huh.
Is he gay?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
Sorry, he just has a twinkish body.
Sure. But are you familiar with him at all?
A little bit. I find
Yeah.
him a little grating, but...
Sure. But he just shuts people's arguments down by like introducing logic and facts and
evidence.
Yeah, which I appreciate in someone. And he was asking somebody why they believed that a woman should not, I don't know, be president or something of the United States. And he said that women just weren't, which, by the way, in so many other countries, women are world leaders. So, but okay. But the guy responded with the typical, well, they just don't handle stress the same. And he was like, so actually, scientifically, anatomically, women's bodies are built to endure more stress and for them to be able to handle more stress, something in the brain or something, than men, because whether or not they end up choosing to have children, it's the body's way to like prepare for that or offset that. And men are not necessarily biologically prepared for the same to handle stress as well as women are, which of course me watching that like within an hour before we recorded, and then us talking about this guy who is medical school is highly stressful. Exam week in any sort of academic institution is highly stressful. Losing your mother is highly stressful. Contemplating proposing marriage is highly stressful. Dealing with the familial dynamic after losing someone, highly stressful. I mean, he was just under a lot of stress, and I am just thinking about how I was just listening to someone talk about how men are not, and we know that they're not socially equipped to deal with stress. Men are not taught how to deal with it in the same capacity that women are taught to or forced to learn how to deal with stress.
Men are not expected to self-regulate.
Right.
Socially, we don't have that expectation of them. And, you know, what you're saying, I mean, not only all of that, but there's a lot of evidence that suggests that Brian didn't even really necessarily want medical school for himself. That he did it with some feelings of pressure from his parents and wanting to live up to that. And I kind of alluded to earlier that Facebook post that I thought he made, but I believe now, actually, looking here, it was on MySpace. And he also made a comment that he would rather be on a beach smoking with Bob Marley. So again, is that someone cracking wise, or is that another indicator that he was feeling a tremendous amount of stress?
Yeah, that also makes me think of the meme that's like, I have nothing less in common than the person who was writing my Facebook or MySpace. What are they called?
Statuses?
Yeah, in 2008 or something like that. In 2007,
2008. Bulletins?
I'm not going to lie. I was not very MySpacey. I was a little late to the social media game, and I came in right around the time that MySpace was fading out and Facebook was coming into play hard and heavy.
MySpace bulletins were so messy. So messy. It would be like, which of your friends do you like the most? Which of your friends do you like the least? Who's most likely to do this? And people would just post those bitches. It's crazy. At 9 p.m., Brian met his friend William Clint Florence at the Ugly Tuna Saloona. An hour later, at 10 p.m., Brian stepped away to call his girlfriend Alexis Wagner. She was in Toledo visiting her family before their trip. She would later remember the call as completely normal. He told her he loved her, he said he'd see her in a few days, and it was the last time she would ever hear his voice. From the Ugly Tuna, Brian and Clint began a bar crawl, a tour of the arena district. According to Clint, at each stop they had one shot of hard liquor, and it was meant to be a night of celebration. Sometime after midnight, now early Saturday, April 1st, they crossed paths with a friend of Clint's, a woman named Meredith Reed. She offered them a ride, and the trio decided to head back to where the night began, the Ugly Tuna Saloona, for one last round. At 1:15 a.m., the security camera at the top of the escalator captured Brian, Clint, and Meredith ascending to the bar. For the next 40 minutes, they were inside. It's in this window of time that something reportedly went wrong. Sergeant John Hurst of the Columbus Police would later reveal that investigators learned that Clint and Brian had a verbal altercation inside the bar. The details of that argument, what was said, how loud it was, and how it ended, have never been made public. At 1:55 a.m., the security camera recorded Brian Shaffer for the final time. He was standing just outside the bar's entrance, chatting with two young women, later identified as Brighton Zotko and Amber Ruick. After a brief...
Yeah, there was a circumcision and everything.
It's so funny you said that. I don't know what cartoon it is that Andrew and I watch, what adult animation, but someone talks about a bris, and then the other character is like, they're going to have brisket. And they're like, no, not brisket, a bris.
Don't think you want to eat that.
Yeah, back to what I was saying.
I think you were going for brief casual conversation. Mm-hmm.
What I was saying, or what I was thinking, Brian Zotko is the young woman that it's believed that Brian was being flirty with. So the supposed kiss on the neck. After a brief casual conversation, he waved goodbye to them and turned, walking off camera, back towards the bar's doorway. Which is what I tried to express earlier. I don't know if I did it as concisely or clearly as now. 5 minutes later, at 2 a.m., the bar announced last call. The lights came up, the music died, and the crowd began to pour out and down the escalator. Clint Florence and Meredith Reed started looking for Brian. They couldn't find him inside, so they tried his cell phone. It went straight to voicemail. They waited outside, scanning the faces in the departing crowd. When he didn't appear, they made an assumption that would haunt the case for years. They figured that he'd gotten tired of waiting and decided to walk the 6 blocks back to his apartment alone. And so they left. Throughout the weekend, the silence from Brian's phone was absolute. On Saturday, Alexis Wagoner called, wanting to talk about their trip. Voicemail. Alexis figured that Brian was sleeping it off. On Sunday, April 2nd, after still hearing nothing, a knot of anxiety tightened in her stomach, and she called Brian's father. Randy and his other son Derek drove to Brian's apartment. His car was parked outside, and inside, the scene was unnervingly normal. His bed was made, his medical books were stacked neatly, but Brian wasn't there. That day, he was officially reported missing. So, roughly, between 24 and 36 hours have gone by. The final undeniable proof that this was not a misunderstanding came on Monday morning. Brian Shaffer was a no-show for his flight to Miami. The vacation where he was going to propose to the woman he loved had begun without him. He was gone. The Columbus Police Department, I also didn't include this, but from what I had seen and read, Alexis Wagoner was really kind of freaking out when it got to Monday and she still hadn't heard from Brian, still wasn't able to get through to Brian. Every call that was made by her, family members, friends, all went straight to voicemail. There was no reaching Brian Shaffer's.
When you say friends were calling, were there any friends that were not calling?
No, not that I made note of, and not that any of the source material explicitly pointed out.
So Clint was also trying to contact Brian?
I don't know, but if he was or wasn't, it wasn't brought up anywhere as being important. The Columbus Police Department began their investigation at the only place they could, the Ugly Tuna Saloona. The initial search was frantic and sprawling. Officers and canine units fanned out, a grid search of the urban landscape. They meticulously combed the streets, peered into dumpsters, and canvassed neighborhoods, holding up a photo of a smiling 27-year-old Brian Shaffer's. The investigation then went deeper, persuading the city to grant them access to the labyrinth of sewers beneath the complex, searching the darkness for any sign of him. Every search, every interview, every dumpster dive came up empty. The investigation's core, however, was the surveillance footage. The South Campus Gateway was a new development, built in an area with a reputation for crime, and it was wired with cameras. Investigators began the painstaking process of reviewing every second of footage from every available angle. What they found didn't solve the mystery. It only helped to perpetuate it. The footage was clear. Brian Clinton Meredith ride the escalator up at 1:15 a.m. Brian is seen outside the entrance at 1:55 a.m. before turning back to the bar, but no camera anywhere ever saw him leave.
With the exception of Brian, were they able to account for every person that they did see leaving on film entering the bar?
I'm sorry, say that again?
With the exception of Brian, when they were reviewing the film, the footage, were they able to account for every single person that they saw leaving the bar, entering the bar? Not the other way around, right? So not, okay, this person entered and I'm looking for that person leaving, but every single person who left, they should have been able to go back and found that person re-entering, because if for some crazy reason he was modifying his stature or his gait or his physical appearance in order to try to leave and avoid meeting up with his friends at the bottom or avoid whatever he might be avoiding, is there any... If I am reviewing this footage, I'm not looking for, okay, this person comes in and I see that person going out. I'm doing it in the other order because I would want to account for everyone leaving also being accounted for entering the bar. But based on your reaction, it doesn't sound like that's information that you have available.
It's not, but I understand your thought process. I want to know that, sure, everyone who came in left, but did everyone who left come in the same way?
Right.
So this is kind of tricky, and I do have something to say about it, which is that, again, no camera anywhere saw him leave. And why does that matter? Well, first, the only public way, and we're getting back to that again, the only public way out of the second floor bar was the escalator, and that was monitored by a singular camera, which all of that footage is accounted for. If Brian Shaffer didn't use that escalator or stairway path, then how else could he have left? How else could his body have been moved? There is a service door for the Tuna Saloona, and it was a back exit, not for public use, and it was located near where Brian was last seen. The door opened into a hallway that at the time led into a very chaotic and active construction site within the building itself. This construction zone had its own exit to the outside, and it was a plausible, if unlikely, escape route. But this theory has been all but debunked. Police who walked the path noted that the construction area was really a hazardous mess of debris and machinery. They concluded it would have been difficult for a sober person to navigate, let alone someone who was doing shots all night. And while the service door itself was a blind spot, other cameras in the vicinity should have captured anyone emerging from the construction area. However, all of these cameras showed nothing. Investigators were forced to consider that he might have been missed. One camera was on a constant pan, another one was operated manually, creating potential gaps in coverage. There is also potential that Brian disguised himself, changed a shirt, pulled on a hat, and kept his head down. These were theories that were really born of desperation, though, and there is no evidence to support them.
You're right. The evidence that we have is that he just vanished into thin air.
It's paradoxical because really and truly, that's That's what feels like the evidence shows, is that someone just vanished. But we know that people can't vaporize. They can't evaporate.
Right.
We can't instantly liquefy. I remember the first time I heard this case, it was being covered on Crime Junkie. And I thought maybe he got chopped up and then taken out in bits. And then I was like, but wait, 5 minutes to chop up a body and take it out in bits would be crazy. But if there was construction in that area, could he have been chopped up over days, hours, then disseminated piece by piece? That's incredibly morbid.
But no one looked for him within that 5 minutes.
That's true.
Yes, he disappeared from camera within a 5-minute span. Also, some bars, when they say it's 2 o'clock, it's not actually 2 o'clock. Do you know what I'm talking about? How some of them, they call it early, or they call it, I don't know if they can legally call it late, but they adjust their clocks.
Since when does anyone give a fuck about legal?
Well, there's something about the having a liquor license that makes places shape up, because that is so tedious, at least in Texas, which is where I used to live. And so I don't know about Ohio, but I guess I don't know if they were closing at 2 a.m. because Ohio requires the bars to shut down at 2 a.m. because that is the case in Texas. They have to be closed at 2. So I guess what I'm learning today in our geography podcast is I don't know anything about Ohio. You've really failed me on this episode.
I know how it's spelled. Brian's digital
Hayden really loves when he makes a mistake.
I love it. I bounce back so quickly. I have so much grit. I have so much resolve that minor errors never upset me.
He just rolls with it.
I water off a duck's back. The digital trail went cold. The digital trail went cold just as quickly. Brian's cell phone was an older model without GPS. I don't really know how many phones had GPS in 2006, but I assume some. All police knew for sure was that within minutes of his 1:55 a.m. disappearance, all calls to his phone went straight to voicemail. Which does feel intentional to me, but batteries die, phones die. In 2006, what were the phones then? Okay,
don't do
this.
this.
My first year of high school, so there were definitely flip phones. There were flip phone.
Did we not have this exact same conversation already, or was that 2002 that we were talking about it?
I don't know. I'm just trying to contextualize. I think my first phone, I guess, was, you know what? I don't want to go down this road. They were flip phones.
Were you still in 8th grade in April of 2006?
No.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes?
Because you would have been a freshman in high school when I was a senior, and I was a junior at this time.
In 8th grade. That's right. Wow.
What a little baby.
I know.
I would say it was mostly flip phones.
Mostly flip phones.
Mm-hmm.
All police knew for sure was that within minutes of his 1:55 a.m. disappearance, all calls to his phone went straight to voicemail. It had either been turned off, the battery had died, or it had been destroyed. For 6 months, that was it. Then, in September 2006, something happened that sent a shockwave through the investigation. Alexis Wagner, who had made a ritual of calling Brian's phone every single night, was stunned when instead of voicemail, she heard it ring. She later wrote on her MySpace page, "I kept calling it to hear it purely because it was one of the best sounds I have ever heard, even if no one picked up." The phone rang 3 times before going dead again, but it was enough. The call generated a ping traced to a cell tower in Hilliard, Ohio, a suburb 14 miles northwest of Columbus. It was the first real lead in months. But just as quickly as hope appeared, it was extinguished. Singular, the service provider, told investigators The ping could have been a computer glitch, a ghost signal from the network, meaningless. To this day, that ping remains a point of intense debate. An uncorroborated but persistent claim citing a former lead detective suggests Brian's phone actually pinged 24 to 48 hours after he vanished, not in Hilliard, but within a 6-block radius of the Ugly Tuna Saloona. If true, it would made it. It would prove he made it out of the building.
Yes.
If true, it would prove he made it out of the building. But this has never been officially confirmed, and all it's done is kind of create this murky territory between fact and kind of the lore that now exists surrounding Brian Shaffer's disappearance. As the investigation drug on, the process of elimination kind of became the new mechanism. Every logical path led to a dead end. Brian didn't walk out of the front. He wasn't seen leaving from the back. His phone was silent, then it rang, then the signal was dismissed as a ghost. The police were chasing a phantom through a hall of mirrors. And technology was failing at every turn. With the physical and digital trails growing cold, the investigation turned from places to people. It focused on those who were with Brian Shaffer in his final hours. And it was here the case didn't just stall, but it hit a solid brick wall of human silence. In the weeks after his disappearance, the Columbus police asked everyone in Brian's inner circle to submit to a polygraph examination. What they stated was a standard procedure. Brian's father, Randy, took one and passed. Meredith Reed, the friend who drove the group back to the bar, also took one and passed. In fact, according to the Central Ohio Crime Stoppers, every single person who was asked and agreed to take the test passed.
Who refused to take it.
Curiously, the two women Brian was last seen speaking with on camera later stated that police never asked them to take one. Then we have the kind of glaring exception. William Clint Florence, Brian's friend, the man who had been with him all night, the very man you asked about earlier, refused to take a polygraph. He did so on the advice of his attorney, Neil Rosenberg.
Smart attorney.
While refusing a polygraph is obviously our right
and
should be exercised, I would never take a polygraph test.
You're not going to get one out of me either. And you can run this back if I'm ever in the situation, but they're not valid. They cannot be used in court, and you're not going to use it to catch me up in something that I'm not caught up in.
Right. Unfortunately, to the layperson, this doesn't look very good.
No.
And
to the police, it's like one of the litmus tests for them. If you refuse to take it, then you're hiding something, regardless of the fact that you probably are refusing to take it because it would be a waste of everyone's time and resources to take it.
Right. Ultimately, this decision proved to be really damning to the public, and Clint Florence became the only person of interest, especially to refuse the test. From that moment on, Clint went silent. He stopped cooperating with media, he stopped speaking to the Shaffer family, and all communication was filtered through his lawyer. This silence became the central agonizing frustration for Brian's family and for an investigation that was starving for leads. Then, in September 2008, the situation took a bizarre and confrontational turn. 2.5 years after Brian vanished, his father Randy was killed in a tragic accident at home. Shortly after his death, Neil Rosenberg, Clint's attorney, sent a stunning email to Don Corbett, a private investigator working for the Shaffer family. This wasn't a quiet legal maneuver, it was a public declaration. Rosenberg wrote, and this is a direct quote, "If Brian is alive, which is what I'm led to believe after speaking with the detective involved, then it is Brian, and not Clint, who is causing his family pain and hardship. Brian should come forward and end this."
Do you hear what is going on behind me?
I'm sure it's something with your dogs.
Both of them. They've both decided to be active. Ginny has decided that now is the time to eat. And Molly has been over here rolling around on her back, making all sorts of noises.
Your girls are restless.
Yeah, so if that's audible in the recording, it'll stay in.
Well, listeners, I'm sure you've heard worse. The letter was a bombshell. It claimed without proof that a detective believed Brian had disappeared on purpose. It then took the extraordinary step of blaming Brian, the missing man, for his own family's suffering. Rosenberg went on to defend his client's refusal to take a polygraph.
Do we not have more information about this death of his father?
No, it was an accident. It wasn't something that was intentional.
Right, but what happened?
I didn't write it down.
So you did know, it just wasn't something you included.
I want to say it had something to do with the storm. Okay, it did have something to do with the storm. A tree branch fell on him during a heavy windstorm outside his home in Ohio.
Wild.
It happened in his backyard in Fairfield County, Ohio. The fuck? In Fairfield County, Ohio, while he was believed to be going to a shed. Randy was clearing debris from his yard after the storm when the accident occurred.
Does Brian, did you say he has a sister?
No, just a brother, Derek.
He's got a brother? Oh, God. Do we have eyes on Derek? This is not an actual theory, but when this much tragedy and it's so weird strikes like this, I'm like, are they like operating in some sort of matrix glitch?
Right. Rosenberg went on to defend his client's refusal to take a polygraph, stating it was not because Clint had anything to hide, but because he, quote, simply has nothing new to tell and was totally upfront and honest with them from the beginning. As far as Clint is concerned, this matter is closed. For Brian's surviving family, did that not strike you right?
The matter is not closed, because if it were closed, we would know where Brian was. And we don't know where Brian is. So that is an interesting way to phrase that. And I imagine that was his attorney. But still, I don't like it.
Me either. For Brian's surviving family, the letter was salt in the open wound. His brother Derek voiced the suspicion he'd held for years. He said of Clint, quote, as soon as the detective started getting involved, that's when he pretty much had no contact with anybody. I've always thought he definitely knows something, just won't come forward with it. Brian's girlfriend Alexis agreed, stating that she also believed that Clint was hiding something. This letter didn't end the suspicion, but cemented it. It erected an official, legally defended wall of silence around the one person who might have held the key to the, quote, verbal altercation police said had occurred inside the bar.
So do the police know what the exchange was, or they were trying to get that information from Clint?
That's what it seems like to me. The latter, but I can't say that for certain.
Yeah, because what you said earlier was that it almost sounded like the police were withholding that information.
Yeah.
But they may not have even had that information.
With no new information from Clint Florence and no other evidence to pursue, the official investigation died on the vine. No arrests were ever made, no charges were ever filed, and the case of Brian Shaffer went cold, frozen in a state of unresolved suspicion and deafening silence. And, as you and I both know, that when facts run out, speculation begins. In the case of Brian Shaffer, the vacuum of evidence has been filled with what really equates to be a labyrinth of theories. Some of them are more plausible than others. Let's talk about some of them.
I've been waiting for this moment.
The first, and what I find the most upsetting, is the theory that Brian Shaffer chose to disappear. That he orchestrated a perfect vanishing act to escape a life that had become too heavy to carry. The evidence for this is circumstantial, but it feels really psychologically potent. Brian was a man under immense pressure. He was facing the final, soul-crushing stretch of medical school, a career that some people have said that he never wanted. Again, his MySpace also contained wistful comments about wanting a simpler life, a, quote, beach bum lifestyle, a sentiment that resonated with his known love for tropical places. Police have always maintained that they cannot rule out the possibility that Brian is alive somewhere. As Sergeant John Hurst said, quote, "There is nothing to indicate that he's not out there." The theory goes that in a moment of clarity, or perhaps intoxication, Brian saw an escape hatch. He used the chaos of the bar closing and the blind spots of the building to slip away and start over.
How familiar was he with this place?
It seems that he liked the Tuna Saloona. It seems like that was a really popular place with people who were engaged in studies there. And of course, I can't say that he was able to go there a lot as a medical student, but it seemed to be like a big undergrad hangout.
I guess my question is more, was he so familiar that he was not only aware of the placements of cameras and the lack of cameras, but also the range that the camera had? Like, 1. 2, do we know how he did on his exams that he took that week? Because if he did really well on them, I just feel like it's unlikely that he would sit all of his exams, put in the effort to do well on them, and then decide in the moment of not clarity, let's be honest, in the moment of disorganized thought or blackout drunkenness, that this would be difficult to do sober. This would be difficult to do very intelligent, very aware of all of these things. And I'm just wondering how he would have been able to have this moment where he decided, this is the moment. I'm not going to leave out the front. I'm going to find my way out of this place elsewhere because I know that there's a camera there and a camera over there. It's so unlikely that that is the case. It is so unlikely.
I agree with you that it's incredibly far-fetched that he planned this mastermind activity and still decided to go to all of his exams. What I will say, when we think about fugue states and we think about people wanting to escape, and it's a phenomenon we've talked about. We know that I idealize this idea sometimes of running away, starting fresh, no one knowing me, being gone for a period of time, no one being able to get a hold of me. And I've never had enough of a driving force to push me to put that plan into action. And to me, what I think of, what comes to mind, is that it's also possible for us to sometimes get really fucking lucky. Like, okay, I'm drunk. I think I don't want to do this anymore. And I convince myself it's okay because I'm dealing with the trauma of my dead mother. Go ahead.
And then when you wake up sober the next day, you're like, I did the right thing.
I don't know. I think that can happen. I know that to some people that feels
anything can happen.
But I think that can happen.
I mean, the guy vaporized.
That doesn't seem as crazy as what I think other people feel it is. I think this idea that you can run away from the pressure of your day-to-day life and not look back is really entrancing. And I think that, I'm not saying it happens often. I'm not saying it happens really ever. But it's not impossible.
No, I'm not saying any of those things either. It's just when you put all of the things into place, it doesn't make sense. Would it ever make sense? No, probably not. But when you see these types of situations where somebody does plan to just disappear and they disappear themselves, and that is their right, although it is in those cases when they don't at least give their loved ones the heads up about it, it's pretty fucked up. So if that applies to you out there,
it's highly unlikely. Is that what happened? Almost certainly not. And the evidence tells us that's probably not what happened.
I don't know what the evidence tells us. The evidence tells us that he's behind some panel in a wall, just like in the case that you mentioned a little while ago that we covered, episode 2, Annie Lay. She didn't leave the building, but her body was found in the building.
That's true too.
Behind a panel in the wall in a bathroom.
What I mean is the evidence of him running off to start a new life. For all it's worth, it's thought that he and Alexis had a really loving and committed relationship. And again, he was only days away from proposing. He also had really strong family ties. He had even invited Derek to join him at the bar that night, his brother. And people who plan to disappear don't make plans for the future with the very people they intend to abandon. It wouldn't have made sense for him to invite Derek with him.
Was he close to Derek?
It seems so.
Was he close to his dad?
I don't know. It seemed like he was very close to his mother.
Yes, it seems like he's very close to his mother, and I'm wondering if maybe he was closer to his mom and Derek was closer to his dad, and he felt maybe almost abandoned in a sense, and that he didn't feel like it. I mean, if this is the theory that we're going to travel down, then maybe there's a case to be made for he didn't feel that close to them, and he felt like the one person in his family that he was close to abandoned him by dying, which is sometimes how people process that maybe that was part of it. But I take a lot of umbrage with the concept that he would have made this decision after drinking and doing shots and being inebriated, after sitting through his exams for a week, all of that, and then now he wakes up sober. He's only gone for a few hours at that point. Wherever it is that he would have woken up sober, it's not like he would have known that anybody would have thought that he had disappeared. So You can't say, oh, well, they theorize that Amy Bradley just is afraid to come back because it's like she's been gone for so long. But there are people who believe that she's the one who went missing off the cruise ship. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there are theories that she's alive, but that she's afraid to return because it's been too long. And I could see that same concept being applied here. But when he initially, quote, would have disappeared, by the time he would have woken up sober, none of the alarms would have been sounded at that point. He would have just turned his phone back on and talked to the people who were calling him.
So not only did he try to make plans with his brother that night to come with him, he also left everything behind. His car, his money, his clothes. And like you were just saying, he never came back. If that was the case, like you said, he could have turned on his phone and simply called the people who were trying to get a hold of him. Randy spent the next 2 years of his life searching for Brian. It's hard to reconcile the loving son and partner with a man that's capable of this kind of sustained and cruel silence that would have been required. This theory was briefly and painfully reignited after Randy Shaffer's death. An online condolence book for Randy received a comment that read, "Dad, I love you. Love Brian, parentheses, U.S. Virgin Islands." For a fleeting moment, it seemed like a sign. And the hope was quickly crushed because police traced the IP address to a computer in Franklin County, Ohio, the same county where he disappeared. What was likely a vicious and heartbreaking hoax. Mm-hmm. The next theory deals with foul play. If Brian didn't walk away on his own, then someone or something stopped him. The theory of foul play branches into several possibilities, each one pointing to a different shadow. The first and most persistent shadow falls on Clint Florence. This theory is fueled by two facts. The police report a verbal altercation between him and Brian inside the bar, and Clint's subsequent ironclad refusal to take a polygraph test. The theory posits that the argument didn't end inside the bar. Perhaps it spilled into a hallway or a back room. Perhaps it turned physical, and a shove or a punch went horribly wrong. In this scenario, Clint, and possibly Meredith Reed, know exactly what happened and have been concealing the truth ever since. This theory, however, is built almost entirely on Clint's behavior. There is no physical evidence, there is no witness, there is no confession. It is just speculation. The second shadow could be a stranger, a confrontation with another patron, a bouncer, an employee. In a crowded bar fueled by alcohol, arguments can happen in an instant. And if Brian were killed or incapacitated inside the building, his body could have been concealed and later removed through the service exit and in to the adjoining construction site. This would explain why he was never seen leaving through the main exit. Police, again, searched dumpsters in the area but found nothing. The third shadow is kind of this idea of a random street crime. This scenario requires that Brian did, somehow make it out of the building unseen. Perhaps he changed his appearance or slipped past the panning cameras through the service exit. The area around the South Campus Gateway was, again, at the time, known for a high crime rate. Once outside, alone and intoxicated, he would have been a vulnerable target for a robbery that turned deadly. His body could have been disposed of miles away. The unconfirmed rumor of early cell phone pings within a 6-block radius of the bar does lend some credence to this idea, suggesting he was on the move outside the building before his phone went silent for good.
Or that his phone was...
There's also the theory of an accidental death. This theory centers around the service exit and the treacherous active construction site that it led to. In this scenario, an intoxicated Brian, perhaps trying to avoid his friends after their argument, or simply looking for a shortcut, slips through the service door. He would have found himself in a dark, disorienting, and dangerous environment. He could have fallen from a height, become trapped in debris, or stumbled into an excavated pit. Injured and alone, he could have succumbed to his injuries or exposure. His body might then have been inadvertently buried or sealed away when construction resumed. This theory neatly explains why he was never seen leaving and why his body was never found in the initial searches. But it has its own weaknesses. Police and cadaver dogs did search the area, though the full extent of that search is not public. And law enforcement officials at the time expressed doubt that even a sober person could have navigated the site, let alone someone in Brian's condition. Despite years of continued development at the Gateway complex, no remains have ever been found.
The theory is not that he did navigate it. The theory is that he wouldn't.
Didn't.
Right.
Yeah.
Also, how far down would one of these pits have been?
I want to tell you, so I didn't even really go down this rabbit hole because it comes from Reddit. There's a really great Reddit master thread for anyone who wants to know more about Brian Shaffer. It literally links you to all of these different resources. And one of the ones that is kind of odd is this idea that his death has been covered up by the city and the university. And I don't even want to get into all of the details, but essentially they posit that the city and the university have conspired to cover up his death as to not hinder development.
Well, here's what I have to say about that.
Okay.
Now, there's going to be some irony to what I say, which will be probably more apparent, but once I say it, but Occam's razor is probably not that there's some massive cover up by a university and a city essentially in order to not, that doesn't make any sense. I think more likely these excavated pits, like how deep are we potentially talking, and when were they covered up, and how deep are the cadaver dogs able to identify potential remains? Those are some of the questions I have, because if the pits were really, really deep and he was in there and it was outside of the scope of the dog's capabilities of smelling the decomposition, I unfortunately think that that's the most likely scenario. And not that anybody's covering it up, but that the investigation that they were able to do with the time frame that they had and the tools that they had was just insufficient to determine that he had fallen in that area or died in that area before construction continued.
It is somehow simultaneously... First off, I don't have answers to those questions. Some of the ones that you raised. But when I think of this theory in particular, it is somehow simultaneously the most likely and the least likely to me.
Yeah.
It makes the most sense, and then it makes no sense at all.
Right. That's the thing that I'm struggling with, and I've been reflecting all episode over, one, why you do disappearances to me, and two, why I react to them the way that I do. And it's because I am, one, a problem solver. I want to know what happened. I want to know how, and I want to know by the end, I want us to be able to put a bow on it at the end, one. But two, I am a devil's advocate girly. So I am able to look at every single potential possible thing, and it just makes me crazy, and they stick with me. And so then I start to a little bit obsess over them, and I can't just pack it up and put it away once we're done. I continue to think about it. I think about Michaela Bali pretty regularly. I know you mentioned her today because you used a source that you had used in that episode, but I think about...
Shout it out, blame it on Jorge.
Jorge, I've never blamed you for anything. And yeah, I can see all of the options because I've thought through, as you've introduced all of the different theories. I've also been trying to think of what could have happened on my own, but all of the different theories that you've mentioned, like you said, simultaneously, they all are like, okay, maybe, but then they all are also like, but probably not.
You said Occam's razor, and philosophically, none of these seem like the most likely scenario. Nothing seems likely.
Right.
And
but what did you say that made me say that?
I don't remember.
Me either. Great. We're doing good. This is good.
Is that if I'm doing my own Occam's razor, and I say this and I hesitate to say it.
That's why I said it was ironic. That me saying Occam's razor was ironic because none of it makes sense. Yeah. That was why I said that. Sorry. I remember saying that. Don't remember why I said it.
I think it's maybe the one that you've railed against the most. This idea that he just disappeared on his own. If you feel so inclined, and I've already mentioned this to the listeners and to you, the Brian Shaffer subreddit is filled with information. And for instance, I just went back and pulled it up. 3 years ago, one of Brian's cousins, Janet Muralt, posted on the Brian Shaffer Dead or Alive podcast for the 16th anniversary of his disappearance. And she writes, 16 years ago tonight, my cousin Brian Shaffer disappeared from the Ugly Tuna Saloona in Columbus, Ohio. It's been quite a mystery with many scenarios that have been discussed. He was a very handsome and intelligent young man and had everything to live for, but the one thing in his life that he treasured was his mom, who passed away a month prior to his disappearance. As a family member, I don't feel this was foul play. I feel that Brian looked at his life and decided it was now time to find the life that he may have always wanted: peace, beauty, and change. Most of his family is gone, but there are still some of us who care and wish he would just let us know he's okay. His favorite band was Pearl Jam, and I always associate this song to Brian. So that said, Brian, if you read this post, please let us know you're okay. This is your anniversary year and opportunity to heal our hearts, and let us stop the search and just have memories of you in better days. Now, of course, to me that does sound like a grieving family member, a confused family member, probably a very tired family member. But one of the things that I find really kind of wild is that also within the subreddit, there's a picture posted of Brian's 2 different university cards. So one for the university or Ohio University and one for Ohio State University. And it is the same person, but they look so wildly different. And I'm not saying that means that he's like a master of disguise, right?
Right.
But in the first image, when he was at Ohio University, we're talking about a guy who had hair that was like past his shoulders. This like strong facial hair, eyebrow hair. Still handsome, but in kind of a grungy looking way.
We're also talking about somebody who was probably a teenager in one and in his mid-20s in the other one.
He is a mid-teenager in his Ohio University card. He is the oldest looking teenager I've ever seen.
Not mid-teenager, a teenager, like 18, sure. 19. Have you looked at a male from 18 to 25 and how physically different they look? Men in particular, they do so much physical development during that time. Women start a little bit earlier, probably to do with biology and reproduction and carrying children and wombs and whatever. But men, that period specifically, 18 to 25, it's wild.
Sure. I hear what you're saying, and I don't disagree with you. I just think that there is validity. I do think it's possible that Ryan just decided to run away.
What about Brian?
Sorry, that Brian just decided to run away. Of course, that's probably a level of projection, right?
It is.
I think about it sometimes too. Not in a way that I would ever do it.
I think about it too. Probably easier for me now.
Yeah, you've already done it.
I haven't. I have not.
Anyways.
But it would be easier for me right now.
I also tried to find the fucking link to the long-ass theory that person wrote about the cover-up. Of course, all of these are allegations. None of them are factual. None of them have anything beyond. I want to make that really clear. I don't have any horse in this race. I don't think any person is necessarily responsible. I'm just reporting to you what I've found.
Yeah, everything is just as likely as it is unlikely. Everything.
There's one that we can pretty much rule out, which is the fourth one I haven't talked about yet.
Okay, can I just throw something in that I wanted to say earlier but didn't yet? I think if you're going to say that in the moment that his mom was gone, that she was the one thing that he truly treasured. That's what the cousin said on Reddit, at least. But we also know that he was very close to his mom, and he lost his mom. Whether or not he was only close to his mom, we don't know. But it would be pretty unlikely, in my opinion, that if his father passed away suddenly, tragically, so shortly after he disappeared himself, that he wouldn't make contact with his brother, because if his brother was close to his father, or he may have left thinking, okay, well, they at least have each other. I don't have my mom anymore, whatever. But when his dad died, I think that if he was out there, he would have made contact with his brother, because he would have known that his brother was then feeling the same level of abandonment by not having either parent there, not having anyone there. I'm not saying that I don't think that it's possible that he made this decision on his own. I hear everything that you're saying, that he was working towards a life that was designed to reflect his mother's life and to make his family, but primarily his mom, proud. And then she was gone, and he had spent all of this time and energy and money and everything working towards doing something almost in service or in honor of her.
Right.
And then she was gone, and that wasn't his passion. His passion is maybe music and smoking like Bob Marley on a beach. I hear all of it.
Shame and embarrassment are really strong motivating factors. And so if you've disappeared and it's been of your own volition and you haven't talked to your family in 2 years, your dad passes, I think it's, again, I'm not saying this is what happened. I don't necessarily think it's what happened. But I think that it is possible for things like shame and guilt and fear, for those things to keep us from reaching out to someone when we otherwise would want to. Which I know you're not negating. I'm just sharing that kind of alternate perspective too.
And then it just makes me think of the role that it's Alexis, right? Alexis Wagner. Mm-hmm. That's just also weird to me, because it's like, okay, well, he's working towards this life that he doesn't know if he really wants it. And so he's going to just walk away from it. Where does she fit into that? Was he only dating her because she fit what he thought his family wanted for him to do, or did he genuinely see a life with it? I don't know. I can't testify. Yeah, I know you're not asking me to, about the importance of his relationship with Alexis, if it was as a way to honor his mom. I don't know. But I hear what you're saying. Let's move on to the last theory, the smiley face killer. Stop it.
The final theory is the most sensational, the most cinematic, and the most controversial. It seeks to connect Brian Shaffer's disappearance to a sprawling and unproven conspiracy, the Smiley Face murders. This theory is championed by retired NYPD detectives Kevin Gannon and Anthony Duarte. They've alleged that dozens of college-aged men found downward from the Midwest, drowned across the Midwest, were not accidents, but victim of an organized group of serial killers.
We're not doing this again, Hayden.
The victims fit a profile: popular, athletic, successful students who vanished after a night of drinking. The name comes from the smiley face graffiti allegedly found near at least a dozen of the recovery sites. Brian Shaffer does fit the profile pretty perfectly.
Does he?
Was a successful student who
Where's the recovery site?
Theory gained traction in his case because of the nearby Olentangy River, a body of water his father Randy desperately searched after being prompted by a psychic. However, this theory has been universally rejected by law enforcement. The FBI investigated the claims and stated they have found no evidence to support a link between the deaths or to substantiate the theory of a serial killer. I repeat, the Federal Bureau of Investigation denies the existence of the smiley face killer. The Bureau's official position is that the vast majority of these instances appear to be alcohol-related drownings.
I cannot believe you have snuck the smiley face killer into another episode.
I didn't do it. It is the fact that this is what people say. Do you want me to ignore the people on Reddit who are posting theories?
Hayden, all of the psychics say that they're found near water, to search near water, underwater, by water.
The Columbus Police Department has explicitly rejected any connection to Brian's case. Criminal profilers have called the theory, quote, ludicrous, arguing that the evidence doesn't fit known serial killer patterns and that smiley face graffiti is far too common to be a meaningful signature.
And if you would like to hear more about the smiley face killer, what was it? Death at Lady Bird Lake is where you discussed it the first time?
Yeah. It remains a popular theory in the dark corners of the internet, but has no official basis in fact. The disappearance of Brian Shaffer is more than a cold case. It is a story of compounded tragedy. A family systematically destroyed by grief and misfortune. The heart of that story, in the years after Brian vanished, was his father, Randy Shaffer. Having already lost his wife Renee to cancer just weeks before his son disappeared, Randy was plunged into a relentless, all-consuming search, and he became the public face of the case. A father whose raw pain was a constant and gut-wrenching reminder of what had been lost. He worked with police, hired a private investigator, and became an advocate for the Central Ohio Crime Stoppers. Randy consulted psychics, and when one told him that Brian's body was near water, near a bridge, he and his younger son Derek bought waders and spent their weekends searching the cold, murky waters and shores of the Olentangy River. In an interview with NBC News, Randy gave voice to the central agony of his life, just not knowing or understanding what, why, where, how. I mean, there's nothing that really fits. The case remains officially open, but inactive at the Columbus Police Department. Over the years, other phantom leads have surfaced. In 2020, a photo of a homeless man in Tijuana, Mexico, who resembled Brian went viral. The FBI conducted a facial recognition analysis and determined it was not him. In March of 2021, the Ohio Attorney General's office released an age-processed image of what Brian might look like in his 40s. He is a man aging only in forensic sketches, frozen forever in time at age 27. Alexis Wagner, the woman he was meant to marry, wrestled with the uncertainty for years. She once told a reporter, quote, "At the beginning, the thought of him running away and just leaving me like this just angered me. But there's a part of me that thinks it's easier to accept that someone else had done something to him because it would have been his idea." She has since remarkably built a new life. She graduated medical school, got married, and has a family of her own. The disappearance of Brian Shaffer is a chilling reminder that sometimes the most terrifying crimes aren't the ones we see, but the ones where we see nothing at all. If you know anything about this case, contact the Columbus Police Department at 614-645-4545. And that's all I have for you.
Do you think that a crime occurred? You know, aside from the smiley face.
I don't.
So what are we doing here at Until the End of Crime?
Well, we have to at least find out and know if it was a crime. There's potential that it was a crime. And there's this conspiratorial part of me, which I hate conspiracy theories. But there's this conspiracist inside of me that it's hard to imagine what could have happened. What could have happened? Was he murdered and taken out in pieces over time? Was he murdered and then snuck out by someone who knew? Did he fall into one of those pits? Did he fall into the construction and get concrete poured over his remains? I don't know. But for me, it seems most likely, and I dread saying this because I feel like it makes me sound crazy, I think that Brian Shaffer either somehow died in that construction or Brian Shaffer just left. But both of those could be wrong. Both of them probably are wrong. I don't know. I don't know how a person vanishes. I don't know how a person vanishes when we have cameras. I don't know how someone just disappears off the face of the earth. Because unless he was abducted by an alien with an invisible tractor beam, what else is there?
I think that those are the two most likely things to have happened.
I know. Tractor beams are crazy.
Shut up. I don't think that there was foul play. I think that he either made a choice or he made a mistake.
Like he ended his own life?
No, like he either disappeared or he went through the wrong door and it cost him his life.
Yeah, I think it has to be one of those two.
I don't think it's foul play because when you're like, I think that I sound crazy when I say that he just disappeared himself. I'm like, you kind of sound a little bit crazier when you're like, was he taken out in pieces amidst people looking for him?
It's so crazy. That was my first thought. I was like, he was murdered. Really and truly, I don't want to get off topic, but I just finished listening to season 3 of The Real Killer, which was 16 episodes. And I think you have to listen to it. I think you have a moral imperative to listen to that series, because I think that I need you to tell me if the alleged murderer is a murderer or not.
Wait, me specifically or like
You.
everybody? Me.
You.
Okay.
You specifically. Listeners, I wouldn't normally plug another podcast, but we don't do long form, and The Real Killer, it was 16 episodes of content that was gripping, engaging, thoughtful, made me question what I think about guilt versus innocence. And in the case of Anastasia Whitbell-Fugan, I don't know if I am supposed to believe her supposed murderer, Byron Case, or if I'm supposed to believe Kelly. I don't know who I'm supposed to believe, but nothing about the case adds up in a way that feels real or meaningful. And so I couldn't cover that one, because how could I possibly fit what I learned in 16 episodes into one episode? If you listen to it on Crime Junkie, you're just missing everything, because so much.
You're only getting half the story.
You're getting a 16th of the story.
Well, that's like when they covered the murder of Heyman Lee. It's like you cannot get in the form that they do in Crime Junkie. You cannot get the full story in some of these, probably in a lot, right? They keep it to like 30 to 45 minutes.
Right. And you can't even always get the full story with us. But alas, here we sit, and I've tried to give you the full story of Brian Shaffer, and now I'm adding the story of Anastasia Whitbell-Fugan. But I wanted to tell you that, and I don't want to forget. I want you to listen to it. Not that you have to listen to it. It's 16 episodes.
Oh, so when you said that you think that I have a moral obligation to listen to it, that's just you suggesting that maybe if I feel like it, I listen to it?
Well, I said moral imperative first off.
Okay, sorry. Imperative and obligation are so different. Mr. Synonyms.
I don't know what to think. And I will say this. Whether or not he committed the crime, I don't know, but he did not get a fair trial. He did not get a fair trial. And so should he be freed from prison on that alone? Absolutely. But he did not get a fair trial.
Yeah.
They did a terrible investigation.
Something that drives me crazy, and I had this thought while you were talking about Brian Shaffer's case, and obviously, again, I don't know how many times we're going to say it, but we'll say it a lot. We don't know what happened. Nobody knows what happened. Me? I know nothing.
We are the last people to speculate. We're the first people to speculate, but we're the last person you should listen to. You should not listen to what we say.
No.
We don't know anything.
I know that this looks like a mouth, but it's really just my ass that I'm talking out of. But
a literal verbal diarrhea.
Honestly. But what I hate is in cases where the investigation is... So it was when you started talking about Clint and how his lawyer advised him to not take the polygraph. And then that made him more suspicious to the police and to the public. Whatever. The public opinion is whatever. But I imagined that they would then start to tunnel vision focus their investigation on Clint, which it seems like in a way they did. And you see it all the time when you untangle the knot of a wrongful conviction and how we got from this string to this other string that has somebody who has an alibi, but they still were convicted of a crime that they clearly didn't commit. When a case is truly solved, when an investigation is conducted and goes where the evidence leads, and it's not biased and it's not confirmation bias,
right,
which happens too much, the pieces fit. It's not forcing pieces to fit. And you see where they take these interrogations and they twist what someone is saying, or they feed them the information, and then whenever it's parroted back to them, it's, aha, see, you did know that. Or, well, how do you think that happened? And they continue to guess. And then they're like, no, it wasn't that. No, it wasn't that. And they're like, oh, well, maybe it was this. And they're like, okay, or something similar. I mean, it gets fed. And it's like when you're putting a puzzle together and you've got a piece and it looks like it goes in this spot, but when you try it, it doesn't fit. It doesn't go in that spot. It goes in another section of the puzzle that you're not even in. And when you find the right piece, it fits perfectly. And that's the same once a case is solved. And it just feels like a lot of times situations like this where Clint's lawyer is absolutely right to tell him, do not take a polygraph, because also they have that he admitted that they had some sort of verbal altercation. But then Brian was on the footage outside of that, like after that happened. And it's not like things were so heated that he, killed him in a crowded bar in an area that happened to not be covered, and then was able to, I guess with help from Meredith is what you're saying, get rid of the body without anybody seeing. It doesn't make sense. I don't think that there was any foul play. And I wonder if the police's notion that he maybe knew something that he wasn't sharing caused the investigation to not be done as thoroughly as it should have been.
That is exactly, not to go back to the real killer, but that's exactly what happens in both season 1 and season 3 of that podcast. And because Clint didn't comply, because he got a lawyer, that very well could have saved him from serving a sentence that he didn't earn.
From being season 4 of The Real Killer.
Correct. And we cannot fault people for exercising their constitutional right. And this idea, you're absolutely right. This investigation stopped going places because they were frustrated that they felt like their only lead wouldn't comply and they couldn't force them to. And that's not to say that I think that the Columbus Police Department didn't do their job.
Right.
But it is to say that somewhere along the line of pursuing leads, they allowed themselves to fumble that investigation to a degree. And they've had a hard time picking it back up. And now they're not even trying to. It's inactive. It's open, but it's inactive.
Yeah.
And Brian Shaffer, wherever he is, however he is, dead or alive, we don't know.
And it's probably inactive because the primary advocate, the primary person who was pushing for answers, is no longer with us.
Right. That's all we've got for this episode. Thank you for listening.
Until the next crime.
If you enjoyed listening and want to hear more, subscribe, give us a 5-star rating, and leave a review.
A complete list of all sources can be found in the episode description.
Recommend us to a friend, and if you are able and willing to help us produce this podcast, sign up for our Patreon.
The link to joining our supportive bestie tier for only $2 a month is listed in the show notes. Also, make sure you're following us at End of Crime Pod on Instagram. I don't know why I didn't post anything for the last episode.
Our email address is endofcrimepod@gmail.com. Gmail! So feel free to reach out with any questions or episode suggestions.